So, welcome to the Chronicle, John. I was just firstly going to ask you then, if I may, what made you want to stand in this by-election when the opportunity came up? What made you think, I want to stand in Oldham West and Royton?
Very simply because it was next door to Haywood and Middleton, where last October I almost won the by-election. I was only 617 votes short. And I thought, well, if the party wants to select me, it's logical. I am a Mancunian. My family's from North Manchester. I mean, I used to be in Tame Valley Road Racing Club as a kid. A bit of a wannabe Bradley Wiggins. And that was before he was born, I think. I'm committed to the cause. I joined UKIP in 2011. I'm 62 years old, so I've actually got involved in politics very late in life. I've never been in a political party before 2011. And I joined UKIP because I looked at the other political parties that I've voted for all my life, and I thought I've had enough, particularly over Europe. I felt they were handing control of our country away to an unelected bureaucracy. And I thought UKIP was the only party brave enough to stand up there and say, no, we need our country back, we need to control our borders. And that's why I got involved. And I never expected to be standing as a parliamentary candidate, but once you get involved in politics, if you've got the commitment, then you do end up doing what I'm doing, which is sticking your head above the parapet, and I'm willing to do that, and I'm willing to be shot at, metaphorically speaking, because I think it's about a battle of ideas. And I think our democracy needs defending. I think we have one-party states in places like Oldham, where there's only been one party effectively for the last 50, 60 years. The same goes in certain Tory areas. I think it's unhealthy that if you just have a one-party state. I think it's really important that there is competition, which is why I think our voting system now, first past the post, is no longer fit for purpose, particularly where we have devolution. So lots of powers have been given to places like Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and you have a party in Scotland, the SNP, who don't want to be in the Union. So I think first past the post doesn't make sense. We got 4 million votes and got one MP. The SNP and the Lib Dems got a similar number of votes and got 64 MPs. So that cannot be a proper reflection of democracy. And so we're fighting that corner. And as I say, I'm standing because I actually really believe you've got to get across ideas and maybe give people a chance to say, you know what, I may have always voted a particular way, maybe out of tribal loyalty, but the parties I voted for, maybe they betrayed the principles of what I first voted for, and UKIP seems to be coming up with a set of ideas and principles which I'm willing to get behind. So, as I say, very simply, democracy is important, and I think people have got to be willing to put their head above the parapet and fight over this battle of ideas.
You mentioned, John, that one of your reasons for standing was how close Oldham is to Haywood and Middleton, where you previously stood. Yeah. It's obviously a completely different constituency, a different town entirely. Do you think you know Oldham well enough to represent it?
Well, I look at it this way. Mr. Meacher was the MP here for 45 years. He was a southerner. I've been accused by Labour of being parachuted in here. Well, I'm sure Mr. Meacher was parachuted in here 45 years ago, but he was a southerner who lived most of his life in one of his many houses down south, and the people of Oldham accepted him. I'm a Mancunian. I don't think you need to have a taxi driver's knowledge of a constituency to do a good job for constituents. If I was the MP here, I'd find out pretty quick about all of the issues and all of the key points. I think it doesn't really matter. I think it's about, do people think you'll do a good job for them? And I'm doing this. I'm not a career politician because I'm effectively at retirement age in many respects. So I'm doing this because I believe in standing up for my country, and I believe in what UKIP is putting forward as policies, and I want to share those with people, and hopefully they'll decide to vote for me.
You mentioned UKIP's policies. Obviously, your main policy is to get out of the EU, isn't it?
Well, it is, but once you scratch beneath the surface of that, it really tells you everything about why we have a whole range of policies, because whilst the EU might seem boring at one level, the reality is the EU now makes most of our laws. our Parliament is not really sovereign anymore. So when you see our MPs and people like the Prime Minister strutting around in Westminster looking as though they're in charge, well, they're not really in charge in the way I believe a sovereign nation's Parliament should be in charge, because many of our laws are basically made in Brussels now. So I think it's really important, if people want change and they want their MPs to be accountable to them, then you need to know they're going to make the laws that affect your everyday life. Well, that's not happening anymore because the laws are being made in Brussels. So it's a fundamental issue, I believe, about, do you believe in a nation state? Do you believe in Great Britain? Do you believe in England? Do you believe in Scotland? If you do, and you believe in the sovereignty of your country, you have to then go to the next stage, which is to say, how do we ensure that that country and the people that represent you in Parliament are doing the job they're there to do? In other words, they've got to make your laws.
So I suppose what a lot of people would ask is, beyond leaving Europe, so let's say you're elected as Oldham West and Royton's MP on the 3rd of December. A few months down the line, maybe in a year's time, we have the EU referendum and the country vote yes to leave Europe. I suppose what a lot of people want to know is, beyond leaving Europe, what do UKIP then offer? What's next for UKIP after that?
Well, if people look at our manifesto in the general election, we have a whole range of policies which is about bringing accountability back to Parliament and closer to the people. Here in Oldham, Labour have been in charge one way or another for 70 years, and yet we have the lowest wage economy in the Northwest. We have the highest level of net immigration in Oldham. The crime stats show that it's been going up since 2011 by about 30%. There are some issues here that I would be saying to the Labour Party, given that you've been here for so long, why is Oldham at the bottom of the pile? Oh, and by the way, you were in government Labour for 15 years, so you can't sort of try and just blame the Tories. And the other thing that really annoys me is when I look at how living standards in Oldham are amongst the lowest in the Northwest. The Labour Council and people working at the Labour Council, they all seem to be doing very nicely, thank you. We have a chief exec, used to be called the town clerk, by the way, on 160 odd grand a year, more than the Prime Minister. That's before that chief exec gets another 27, 28 grand in pension contributions. These are figures that mean are in a stratosphere compared to what the average person in this constituency earns. There's about 25 people earning over 100 grand on the council. There's about 150 people earning between 50 and 70 grand. Seems to me that Labour and the people in their cartel on the council are doing very nicely, thank you. They're earning big money to run this council, and yet the average person around here isn't doing very well indeed. The councillors, very generous allowances. Mr. McMahon, I think he's earning about 42 grand a year. Now, I thought people who went into politics, certainly at the local council level, did so as a vocation, and yet the councillors can earn big allowances. Seems to me that Labour and the Labour Council are all doing very, very nicely, thank you. They're earning plenty of money, while the average constituent around here is struggling.
Do you think there's an element of hypocrisy then in complaining about things like, well, we'll get onto it later, but things like tax credits when actually there are people within the council earning significant salaries?
Well, Labour have got a history of being hypocrites. Look at union bosses. People like McCluskey is earning a big six-figure salary and probably has 10, 20, 30, 40,000 pound a year contribution to his pension. They're all living what they would claim to be fat cat salaries in the private sector, but no one says anything about it when it's happening in the public sector or in the unions or at the town council, where, as I say, they're all living high on the hog. And again, this feeds into why I was concerned about the amount of money that's going into this town hall renovation, which I think originally was supposed to be £10 million. It's now £36 million, and counting. And I, just to reiterate the point, the reason I picked up on this, I used to work in the film business. When I was, Mr. McMahon, young man, obviously very ambitious, though he claims not to be. I think he's clearly a career politician. When I was 34, I was managing director of a joint venture company in London run by Paramount Pictures and Universal Studios. I know about the film business. I've spoken to people in the film industry about this project in town. They're not taking any risks. All of the risk at this multiplex lies with the taxpayer. And the other thing which I'd like to point out is the film industry, in terms of cinema attendance, is in decline. They're going down. This is not a growth industry, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist, because everyone's getting broadband and everyone's streaming content and everyone's buying Blu-rays and DVDs. The future of film is in digital distribution, and the nature of the cinema business is very cyclical. It has highs and lows. The jobs that we're told the council claim they're going to generate are going to be 0 hours contracts in many cases. Jobs that will probably only pay or will require taxpayer-funded tax credits. I mean, are these the jobs? Are these the sort of jobs the council thinks are the only sort of jobs that should come in? Is that the limit of their vision? I've already said my vision is to rekindle in this town the level of expertise that we had at the time when it was building things like the Lancaster and the Vulcan. These were cutting-edge products, if you will, that even the Americans weren't able to build. So we had lots of industry in Oldham, people supplying the Avro factory, that were in the Silicon Valley equivalent of manufacturing. And my view is you need to get back into this town, high-skilled jobs, work with businesses and the educational partners in this town to say, are we educating our kids with the sorts of skills they're going to need to be in this high-tech industry, that's where the money is in the future, not in low-paid jobs serving up ice cream at half-time in a cinema. For me, when I look at the amount of money that people in the council are earning and the council are paying themselves, that I know that they won't divulge the deal behind the town hall, because I know people have put FOI requests in and they've been turned away. They're effectively using the confidentiality clause to not tell people in this town where all the money's coming from, what are the repayment terms, what's the commercial deals they've done with the partners, and they don't want to tell the taxpayer. And I think there's a very good reason why, because the taxpayer's on the hook for a lot of money. Now, I've had constituents come up to me and say, "Oh, not very happy, John, that you said this is not necessarily don't need a multiplex."
I was going to ask you about this.
And I said, "Well, do you realise you're paying for it?" Pardon? I said, "You're paying for it. This is not a free lunch. You're paying for it. It's coming out of your taxes." And if there was a demand for a multiplex, then if I was back in the film business as I used to be, and I was working in that side of the film business, then you'd say there's a great opportunity in Oldham, let's go and build a multiplex. That's not what's happened. The council's decided it knows best. The council's decided it knows about the film industry, and I'll repeat it, the film industry in terms of cinema audiences is going downhill. So potentially you're looking at a white elephant.
What has the reaction been like on your views on the town hall? Because I spoke to Jim McMahon earlier this week. Yeah. He said the majority of people he spoke to are actually a bit outraged that you don't think that project should go ahead. What I'm asking you is, what's the response you've had?
I've had a response. I think that's a bit of a. Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? Because he's on the hook for this, and I wonder whether he'd be quite happy to get elected, and then when it all goes wrong, as it might do, he'll claim it's nothing to do with him. Look, everyone would like all of these things. Everyone would like, yes, let's have a bowling alley, let's have a multiplex, let's have, the equivalent of the Trafford Centre. All these things are fantastic. All these things we would all like. We'd all like. Can we build an artificial beach so we think we're in California? Great. Who's paying for it? Well, the taxpayer's paying for it. If there was a need for it, companies that specialise in that in the private sector would be the first to step up to the plate and say there's a great opportunity in Oldham, let's go and build a multiplex. They're not saying that, and it's speaking to people in the industry. The people that are getting involved are taking no risk. It's a free lunch for them. All the risk lies with the council, and in turn lies with the taxpayer. So I think I'm willing to stand on principle, even if people don't agree with me, because I think at the end of the day you've got to have some principles. And my principle is I don't believe that the council should be taking gambles with taxpayers' money on multiplexes. What they should be doing is they should be ensuring frontline services are working. That's what a council exists for. And make sure the schools are working, the care services are working, I absolutely agree that the council should play a role in making sure infrastructure is in place, because I do accept all of that is important. I just have a real problem that the gamble they've taken on building a multiplex, in my view, the better gamble, in inverted commas, to have taken would have been to have built something that's a really, really attractive high-tech startup and bring in high-value jobs and high-value partners who would then be bringing money into Oldham, high-value wages, spending that money in the town and bringing in suppliers and services that would be supplying these companies, and use it as an acorn to grow a large oak tree. Because you have to regenerate the sorts of jobs that are going to be the high-value jobs of the future, and the high-value jobs of the future are in a lot of these digital technologies.
You had experience working with trying to monetise University of Manchester sort of technical ideas, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been involved in spinning out a business from Manchester University. It's difficult, I've risked my own money. I sort of understand the risk you have to take to try and create wealth and jobs. I have a bit more time for the Labour Council if they weren't paying themselves and the people on their council weren't paying themselves such fantastic salaries, and could actually say that all of the services provided by the council were the best in the country, and that wages weren't the lowest in the northwest, and that they got a grip of providing social housing for local people. And there's lots of pressure because of the net immigration figures here. Those are the facts. So that's my view on that. And I know you can't please all the people all the time, but you've got to be willing to say to people, this is why I believe in this. And people can make their minds up.
Something we're expecting to play, and to be honest, you could argue that it already has a big part in this by-election, is tax credits. Mm-hmm. It's a huge issue at the moment. Yeah. UKIP support the cuts, but would like to see them phased out rather than the slice that it would seem George Osborne wants. Is this going to be a problem for you? Because 8,000 families in Oldham West and Royton are actually relying on those tax credits.
Well, let's be brutally frank about this. Gordon Brown and the Labour government brought in tax credits and told us tax credits would only cost the taxpayer. Because remember, and I really must make this point because I think it's really important, the Labour Council and government don't have any money. I'll repeat that, they don't have any money. The only money they have is our money. So every time you listen to the likes of a Mr McMahon or a Gordon Brown or a David Cameron saying, oh, we're going to give you this and we're going to give you that, no, they're not. It's not their money. What they're doing is taking money off one group of taxpayers and giving it to another group of taxpayers or people who don't pay taxes. Governments don't have money. So Gordon Brown told us, and the Labour Party told us, that tax credits would only cost £1 billion a year. They've mushroomed to over £30 billion a year. Now, again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to say something's gone wrong there, that something that came in to address a specific issue is so far out of kilter in how much it's costing taxpayers, something has to be done about it. Now, UKIP's position is, we wanted to back Frank Field's amendment. Now, Frank Field is one of the stalwarts of the Labour Party. In fact, he was the guy that Mr Blair asked to look at the welfare system and think the unthinkable. Mr Field did think the unthinkable, and Mr Blair didn't like it, so shoved him off into the long grass. Douglas Carswell, as our MP in Parliament, was the first one to say, I will back Frank Field's amendment to the tax credit welfare bill. Where were all the Labour MPs? Why didn't the Labour MPs get behind Frank Field's amendment? Which you can't... Labour pretty much bought the Tories' welfare cap bill, or the abstain, which is the same thing as really saying we've got no courage to say no, so we're going to abstain. So they pretty much... Labour bought into the Tories' welfare bill, and the welfare bill by definition had to have an impact in the area of tax credits. So our position is what Frank Field from Labour wanted to do on tax credits we thought was fair. It was about...
For the purposes of our readers that will be listening to this, can you explain to us what that is?
Well, his amendment was very much along the lines of the tax credit bill has got completely out of control, and even Labour accept that. We need to change it slowly but surely at the time when wages are moving up, i.e. the living wage, and you're pushing people out of the tax at lower incomes. So broadly speaking, there'll be very little difference as tax credits come down and wages go up. And this is what Frank Field put forward. And my view is, why didn't the Labour Party do that as well? Why didn't the Labour MPs get behind Frank Field? And my other point, and this is a point Labour have to address, they don't like talking about immigration. One, because they now know, and even some of their ex-ministers have accepted, that they caused mass immigration in the noughties. But Labour can't really, or don't want to admit that. But from time to time they will say, oh yes, we're going to do something about immigration. When I stood in Haywood and Middleton in October, they didn't want to talk about immigration, but funny enough, when we came to the general election, I think Labour even produced their own mug saying fair immigration. But then they wouldn't tell you that to have fair immigration you have to be able to control your borders, and you can't do that if you're in the EU. So my next question to Mr McMahon and Labour is, if you are serious about controlling immigration, because at the moment, if I come into this country from Europe and I earn £12,000 a year and I have 2 kids, I can earn another £9,000 in tax credits. It's a magnet. And I don't blame anyone wanting to come here. I would do the same. I'd be the first on a bus from Eastern Europe to come here with the benefit system we have. But we're paying for it, both in terms of through our taxes, and the working class people around here are finding their wages have been compressed over the last decade, and often they've had to compete for the jobs that have now been given to immigrants. And so if Labour are serious about wanting to see a fairer immigration system, which is what they keep telling us, but they don't tell us how they're going to do it, they can't support the continuation of the current tax credit system because it's a major pull factor from people from poorer European countries. So they really need to come out and come clean about why they didn't back Frank Field's amendment and why they don't want to control immigration, because you can't do that unless you control in-work benefits.
I suppose what I'm really asking here, John, is does UKIP's stance on tax credits, does that concern you with the people you've got to try and win over in this by-election?
No, because
a hell of a lot of them are reliant on those tax credits.
Yeah, and I've said what our view about that is. Everyone, and including the Labour Party, because they abstained on the Tories' welfare bill, so they effectively, in a roundabout way, are agreeing there's a need to control welfare spending, but they're too supine to actually admit it. We said we want to see, as what Frank Field did, we want to see tax credits realigned as the living wage comes in and as people are taken out of tax, so that the net effect is that people should be no worse off. And I have to again say this as well, if you control immigration, you then are making more jobs available for British people, because one of the things that immigration has shown us, there's not a shortage of jobs, and we can't pretend otherwise, but those jobs should be going to British people in the first instance, which is why we want to control immigration. So if more jobs are available, and we have less pressure pushing down on wages, because people desperate for work are coming here and will accept lower wages, then you're able to say to the British people, and this is our position, is we would have a moratorium. We would actually say we wouldn't allow low-skilled immigration from Europe for 5 years. There's a reason for that, which is to let our own people take up the jobs that are available, which we know have been available, and for wages to go up. And then you don't need... I mean, remember, tax credits are only there because employers have been able to get away with paying low wages because the government side are picking up the tab. So employers are saying, I don't need to pay you very much because I know the government's going to pay you the difference. Well, that's crazy economics.
The point is the government, that we, the taxpayers, are subsidising companies.
They're subsidising wages, absolute bonkers.
And just a quick answer to one of the things you were asking there. People that I have spoken to, I haven't come across many people, even if they are on tax credits, saying we think the country's got masses of cash. They understand that something has to be done. As long as this tapering thing works, they don't fall off the Osborne cliff.
Yeah.
They get it. They do. People, just because they're on tax benefits doesn't mean they're stupid. They do understand that something needs to be done. You see what I mean? You asked that direct question. I thought, well, actually, people, just because I get in the receipt of tax credits doesn't mean I don't understand that the country needs to do something about its welfare bill.
And I have to say, and this is a fundamental point I have about a problem with the Labour Party. The Labour Party believes in the client state. The Labour Party believes it wants everyone to be reliant on them for handouts. The Labour Party's whole philosophy is they don't believe in an entrepreneurial society. What they believe in is that everyone has to give up a lot of their cash in taxes, and then Labour will decide what you can have back. So Labour actually wants people to have to remain on and rely on state benefits. The generation my father came from, and he was a labour and trade union man, the people that fought in the war, they didn't want benefits. To them, it was anathema. What they wanted was availability of jobs. So people who form the core of the Labour Party and the Labour Party movement and the Labour Party membership would see the current welfare system we have as just not meeting with the core ideals of the Labour Party of the 30s, 40s and 50s, which was you helped people in genuine need. Everyone else went out to work. Everyone else contributed taxes. It's got out of kilter now, and of course it's very easy. We understand why. The Labour Party sees the benefit of buying people's votes by effectively having them rely on the Labour Party to keep giving them other taxpayers' money in order for them to vote Labour. And it can't go on, because after 70 years of Labour, people around here are actually worse off than they were in the 50s.
Let's move on then. Something else that came out of my interview with Mr. McMahon on Monday was that he referred to you as a very poor candidate. Can you tell me your thoughts on those comments?
I'm disappointed at one level and not at another. One, I've been led to believe that Mr. McMahon was quite a bright chap, even though it's clear to me he's a career politician. If that's the limit of his ability to engage with the opposition, I think it says a lot about Mr. McMahon. I mean, it'd be quite good if he actually had the ability to put forward some arguments to me, but he's a poor candidate. I mean, is that it? Does he mean I'm poor and he's going to give me some money out of his 40-odd grand allowance? Is that what he means? But really, if that's it, and he wants to represent this constituency, is that the limit of his intellectual engagement with the party here, which is the only party now that can threaten Labour? I'm just shocked, actually.
Right, we shall see at your debate.
Yeah.
But the Oldham Chronicle debate.
That's my view.
You're right.
Well, let's move on from that as well then. Michael Meacher won the general election with a majority of over 14,000 votes.
Yeah.
Simply winning votes from the Tories is not going to win you this by-election. You're going to have to take some from Labour as well. How are you going to do that?
Well, very simply, not dissimilar to what happened in Haywood and Middleton, where a lot of Labour voters came over to vote for UKIP. I mean, most of our membership now, and most of the votes we're getting in the north of England, are coming from the Labour Party, coming from ex-Labour supporters, people who voted Labour all their lives. I mean, Labour's been wiped out in Scotland. Let's just think about this. In Scotland, a fortress for the Labour movement, they've got one MP. So I think we're possibly heading towards a number of tipping points in British politics. One's just happened in Scotland, where Labour have been basically kicked out. And we may be heading the same way here in England. And when you look at what the Labour Party are doing to themselves, they're tearing themselves apart. I mean, Mr. Corbyn on Monday didn't think we should shoot terrorists if they were in the process of slaughtering British citizens, but on Tuesday he was basically forced to change his mind. So if it's a Monday and we're under attack from terrorists, he won't do anything, but if it's a Tuesday, he will do something. And is he going to change his mind tomorrow? And now Red Ken Livingstone apparently is in charge of Defence Review, but I thought Maria Eagle was the Defence shadow spokesman. I mean, what is the Labour Party doing? And Mr. McMahon thinks Mr. Corbyn's a fantastic asset to his campaign. So does he agree with Mr. McMahon? Does Mr. McMahon agree with Mr. Corbyn about let's get rid of the monarchy, let's give the Falkland Islands back, let's abolish the army, let's have unlimited immigration, let's take tens of thousands of migrants, let's not have a shoot-to-kill policy. I mean, apparently Mr McMahon thinks Mr Corbyn's great, so I assume that's what he believes in as well. He needs to tell the voters of Oldham, and if he doesn't believe with what Mr Corbyn is saying, why is he standing for the Labour Party? Shouldn't he do the honourable thing and resign? Or shouldn't he come out and ask Mr Corbyn to resign immediately? The Labour Party is becoming quite quickly a farce.
So do you
I'm glad my parents aren't around, actually. I'm glad they're not alive today, because they were Labour people throughout their lives. They'd be disgusted with what's going on in the Labour Party.
So you think that's going to sway things in Oldham West and Royton then? With the very fact that Jeremy Corbyn's Labour leader, do you think you're going to win votes just because
I think there's a lot of people who are Labour. In fact, I met a Labour voter last week when I was out with a member from the press who said, I've voted Labour all my life, but I'm voting for you. And he was asked by the journalist, what do you think of Mr Corbyn? And he said very simply, he's an idiot. Now, it takes a long time to turn a super tank around, and let's all be honest. The way a lot of people vote is very tribal. Understand that, but that's enabled the Tories and the Labour Party to take advantage of a lot of voters because they just think, well, you've got nowhere to go, so you're going to vote for me even if you don't like the policies we've got. Well, we're trying to change that and give people an opportunity. I mean, I look at people who are locked into the Tories or Labour. It's almost for me a form of political Stockholm syndrome. They're trapped and they sort of fall in love with the captor. And what I'm trying to do and my party's trying to do is there is a safer place for you to go politically over here. And a lot of people are doing that. But I'm under no illusions. This is a very, very strong Labour seat. But that doesn't mean people shouldn't be given an option to think about whether they should continue to vote for a party that, in my view, has betrayed the working class, no longer represents the values of the working class, and with Mr Corbyn and his cabal of Marxists, no longer represents the values of this country. In fact, I think they're a real and present danger to our country.
Correct me if I'm wrong, is this the third by-election we'll be standing in? Or is this the fourth? It is. Yeah.
It's pure coincidence they've all been in Manchester, my home city.
McMahon, again, he referred to you as being parachuted in. Do you disagree with that? Or do you keep going until you win a by-election?
No. That's not how it works. I just say to Mr McMahon, did he accuse Mr Meacher of being parachuted in because Mr Meacher was born down south? So I really, if Mr McMahon wants to take that further, is he going to have a word with all of the Labour MPs and ministers who are representing constituencies that they've got absolutely no allegiance to? Ed Miliband, the great Yorkshireman, Ed Miliband, Doncaster. He's got nothing to do with Doncaster. He's a North London person.
I think his comments were around the fact that this will be the third by-election you'll have stood in this region. I think
it's completely irrelevant. There's lots of Labour MPs who stood in many, many seats before they were elected. I think it's pretty. Is that all he's got to say? Does he want a battle of ideas, or does he just want to score some cheap points, which hopefully voters will see through and think, well, has Mr McMahon got anything of substance to say? Does he want to have a battle of ideas with me, or does he just want to try and score some cheap points? I mean, I thought this was supposed to be a very bright guy, the future of the Labour Party. Well, can he actually mature in political terms, please, and engage in a proper political debate rather than just trying to score cheap points?
Okay.
I certainly had no intention of taking him on a personal level. I want a battle of ideas with him and the other candidates for that matter.
Let me phrase it this way then. Obviously, the plan for you is to win this by-election on December the 3rd. If you don't, do you keep fighting until you are elected as MP? Because you clearly want to be an MP.
Well, no, actually, I want to make a point here. Yes, at this juncture, I want to do the very best job I can, and if the people here elected me to be their MP, based on what I've done in my life, I do a very professional job in doing that. But actually, I'm more interested in doing something rather than being something. It's clear to me that people like McMahon are career politicians. They want to be something. I want to do something, and what I want to do is fundamentally at the core of this is we've got to get our country back. I'm back in Britain. No other party really wants to do that. Even Mr. Cameron, who claims, with all the atrocities that are going on, we're going to start spending lots of money on our defences and security. And I'm going, well, the elephant in the room is, why don't you just control our borders? If you're really worried about the threat to us, control our borders. But they won't. And neither will the Labour Party.
More specifically about Oldham, you'll have been out canvassing like the rest of the candidates, you'll have been out talking to the people of Oldham, West and Royton. What for you is their biggest concern in this by-election? What's the biggest issue for Oldhamers that you found when you've been talking?
Things that have come through to me is people are fundamentally concerned about uncontrolled immigration. And when I say that, it's a catch-all for lots of problems. A lot of people look at the things that affect them and feel that uncontrolled immigration, the impact it has on school places, hospital beds, transport system, housing, they feel that people don't represent them anymore. And also social cohesion. People worry about the country they live in and its values, and worry that no one's listening to them, and worry that no party now other than UKIP is actually willing to do something about controlling our borders and controlling the immigration system. We've said all along we just want an Australian type immigration system where anyone can come here from around the world. So we're actually very pro-immigration, but it has to be controlled. And rather than just allowing anyone to come here from Europe and then stopping people coming here from the rest of the world, as the Labour Party and the Tories do, because they're worried about the numbers but they can't do anything about it, we want everyone to be able to come here, but only on the basis of an Australian type points-based system. So immigration, it was a massive issue in Heywood and Middleton. It's an issue round here, and even amongst some of the different communities round here, it's a problem. They worry about uncontrolled immigration. So this isn't a white British thing. This is people who've been here 1 or 2 or 3 generations, and they worry about it because they're British. And they think, well, you know, what's going on? And they're seeing pressure on their social services, pressure on their communities, pressure on housing, and people don't understand what the purpose of all this is, and they see the political class effectively with the fingers in their ear going la 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 la, I don't really want to have to engage with you on this subject because I don't want to be called whatever, whatever, whatever. And we're saying, sorry, there's nothing wrong with talking about, if you believe in a nation state, there's nothing wrong with talking about wanting to control immigration.
You've been out there talking to him, John. Did people of Oldham, West and Royton want an Australian type immigration policy? Is that what they want?
Yeah.
Is that the feedback you've been getting?
People say that to me,
right?
Because it's something we've been pushing for some time. You know, in general elections and other by-elections, and people say, yeah. When you either mention it, they go, oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, because they know that as much as we might all want to go and sunbathe on Bondi Beach, you can't just turn up at Sydney Airport and say, you know, right, hello, where's my house and benefits, and let me in. They'll say, thank you very much, can you get back on the plane? People understand that, and they understand that it is right that if people are coming here, they're going to pay money into the pot. So we'd expect people who come here to have their own private health insurance and pay into the pot before they can have access to our benefit system. British people are very, very fair, and funny enough, they're very conservative with a small c. And they believe that if you pay into the pot, which was the original idea of, after the war, Bevan's, the NHS and the welfare system, was you pay in, and at the point where you're really in trouble, the state there is there to help you. It's got completely out of control now, where there's lots of people coming in to the country, or people within our communities, who don't want to make a contribution or don't make a contribution but expect everything to be coming out to them. And again, I'll repeat it, the government doesn't have any money. All the government's doing is taking money off people that are paying taxes and giving it, in many instances, to people who don't put enough into the pot. So immigration is something that's not going to go away. There's no point in the 3 main parties pretending it will, because actually it is something that the average voter is concerned about. And at some point, if you keep ignoring the voter, they will turn. And in some respects that's happening. We've got 4 million votes in the general election, more than as many as the SNP and the Lib Dems.
Lastly then, John,
Yes.
Could you just finish by telling me, by telling the people of Oldham West and Royton who will be listening to this, you tell them why they should vote for you and what you're going to do for them if they do?
Well, I would like the voters in this constituency to realise that UKIP is a party that actually wants to back Britain, believes in Britain, believes in controlling our borders and believes in our laws being made by our parliaments, and that I would see it as an honour to represent them and would represent them, not my party, in Parliament, and would do everything I can to get our country back and get our country to be sovereign again, where MPs who represent them make laws on behalf of their constituents and are then held accountable for doing so.
Great, John, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.